Let's bring in Hussein Ibish. He's the senior resident scholar at the Arab Gulf States Institute in Washington. Thanks so much for joining us, Hussein.
You're welcome. It is Ibish, yes.
Ibish. Okay, thanks for the correction.
No, that's fine.
Now, of course, we know that Israel's ground offensive is imminent. What are the risks of such an offensive at this point in Gaza?
I mean, for the people of Gaza, the risks are colossal. On the first level, the potential for a decimation of the population, quite literally. In other words, the death of up to 1 in 10 Gazans is not completely unthinkable. Israel militarily has long, from the founding of the state, and even Jewish militias before the founding of the state, adhered to a strict doctrine of disproportionality as a means of deterrence. So they've always gone for ensuring that many more Palestinians, especially civilians, die than Jewish ones. And usually they shoot for a target that's much more like 10 to 1 than 2 to 1. And I'm sure this will not be an exception to that. So they're going to go for kind of overkill. Plus, you can't really separate the Gaza infrastructure from the infrastructure of Hamas. And there's nowhere for all these people to go. Israel says you should leave, you should take this highway and that highway. It's a cruel jest to say that, frankly, because there's nowhere for them to go. Death is one thing. The other thing is the Israelis may find themselves bogged down in a tight urban warfare setting with an insurgency that's already been prepared. So those are the risks for Israel and for the people of Gaza.
Okay. And of course, the humanitarian situation on the ground is already at catastrophic levels.
Absolutely.
Former Israeli Deputy Foreign Minister Danny Ayhan said the people of Gaza should evacuate their residences and relocate in the Sinai Desert in Egypt. Critics say that this is a form of ethnic cleansing. Would you see what's happening to the people in Gaza as a form of genocide?
No, I hate hyperbole. So genocide to me, even though there are many different meanings of the word genocide, and the definition under international legal instruments is very broad. I don't like it. There are even people in Israel accusing Hamas of genocide. We should be very careful about using that word unless we're talking about a systematic effort to wipe out an entire people. I really don't think that's what's going on here. I do think we're on the brink of potentially of ethnic cleansing. I think if the Egyptians did open the border, not just the Rafah crossing, which is very small, but generally the border between Gaza and Sinai, you could see an exodus of 50 to 70 or even 80% of the population of Gaza, a million and a half, or 1.8 million people. They would never go back. The Israelis would never let them get back. And it would be another major ethnic cleansing of Palestinians after a huge one in 1947-48 and another very significant one in 1967. Both the Egyptians and the Palestinians do not want that to happen here.
So what does that mean?
The Egyptians are not going to open that port.
What does that mean for not just the 2 million plus Palestinians that potentially leave Gaza, or as you say, Egypt may not open the border?
They will not.
Well, what does that mean for them then? Where do they go? And also, what does it mean for the prospect of a two-state solution with Israel and Palestine?
Okay.
Is that the end of it?
Well, I think it's been moribund and, practically speaking, unattainable for some time. You would have to reverse a lot of what Israel's done since the Oslo agreements in 1993 in order to make a two-state agreement possible, but that you can do that. In fact, the Israelis did redeploy out of Gaza and the northern West Bank under Ariel Sharon in the noughts, and you could do it again if the reasons of state demanded it, but it's a very big stretch at this point. I think we're going in the other direction, which is towards ethnic cleansing and mass annexation in the West Bank. Now, what I think you're looking at in Gaza is a situation where there aren't any good options for Israel. They can either reoccupy the Gaza Strip directly, and I'm sure Hamas would really love that, and that's what they want. They want to lure the Israelis into a trap where the Israeli soldiers get involved in this kind of butchery machine that they have ready for them, or they will rebuild it over time if they get decimated by the attack. The other option is to kill as many people, especially Hamas members, and damage as much equipment and infrastructure as possible, and quickly get out and declare victory and go. And then watch Hamas climb out of the rubble and declare victory and reestablish their rule there. That's a very bitter pill for Israel, but it might be the wisest, it is the wisest thing for them to do.
Talk to us about what regional players can do. Of course, we know Blinken is meeting with Arab leaders. We have Iran threatening to get involved via Hezbollah. We have Saudi Arabia, who's put the prospect of any two-state solution on a back burner, or at least closer ties with Israel on the back burner. Yes. Now the US is sending warships over to the region. What can be done at this point? Is it a case of de-escalation? And is the US doing its job of trying to de-escalate if, meanwhile it's sending these warships over to the region?
No, not yet. The warship, well, yes. In a way, yes, and in a way, no. So the Gerald Ford Task Force, which is an aircraft carrier task force which was dispatched, is designed to deter Hezbollah. Not Hamas or anybody else or even Iran. It's designed to deter Hezbollah in Lebanon and to say, listen, we're watching you. And if you take actions that we regard as completely indefensible, you might have to deal with us. So we're here and we haven't left the region, etc. That's probably helpful in the sense that the last thing anybody needs, including Hezbollah and the Lebanese people and the Lebanese state, need is a Lebanese or Hezbollah-Israel war. That's really a disaster. So, having said that, I don't think the United States has started playing the de-escalatory role that it needs to play and should play between Hamas and Israel. What the U.S. tends to do, and this is a very familiar dance, in these multiple wars we've seen between Hamas and between Israel and the two Iranian sub-state groups, Hamas and Hezbollah, in Lebanon and in Gaza, is the U.S. initially it says we are all out support for Israel. Then they start urging caution. Finally, they call for a ceasefire, and ultimately they demand an end to hostilities. At some point along the way, Israel agrees to stop, and it goes back to the status quo ante. Now, I think that's where we're headed here, but Israel is going to have a much broader remit from Washington than usual because of the extent of the Hamas provocation. They really went on a killing spree in southern Israel, and a lot of Americans feel that deeply, and politically, it resonated a lot in the United States.
All right, Hussein, really appreciate your insight there. Hussein Ibish, senior resident scholar at the Arab Gulf States Institute in Washington.